Hi everyone and welcome to Alliance Live, the online information and learning portal showcasing examples of innovative and integrated working taking place within health and social care in Scotland. We continue this series of 30-minute webinars by focusing on digital evolution, not revolution, and why your charity needs digital leadership. Ross McCulloch, Director of Third Sector Lab, explores the building blocks of digital evolution and how your organisation can make change. Ross will discuss the role of leadership, culture, data, flexible technology, and service design in ensuring the organisation is truly user-focused. He's the facilitator of SCVO Digital's Senior Leaders Programme, and will share some of the learning from this programme, which is now in its fourth year. Ross has worked with a wide range of charity and public sector clients on digital and social media strategy, including Relationship Scotland, SCVO, Oxfam, Enable Scotland, and CCPS. He is also a trustee of parenting across Scotland. Finally, as our speaker delivers our presentation, we invite the audience to pose questions using the chat box, which is found within the toolbar at the bottom of the screen, or in the webinar window. These will make up the questions for the Q&A session, which will follow on from the presentations and bring our webinar to a close. Now, without further delay, over to Ross.
Okay, thanks for the introduction. So you'll be able to get the slides just now. So the first slide, I just want to quickly actually start by thanking Dougie from Alliance, who pointed out the fact that my original title was a bit useless, and actually digital transformation, no, in fact, digital evolution, not transformation, was not as catchy as the digital evolution, not revolution. So thanks to Dougie for changing it and making a much snappier title. There's a couple of links in that first slide. So the first one is just me shamelessly asking you to follow me on Twitter. If you're listening to this just now or you want to share it with other people, you can use the Alliance Live hashtag on Twitter as well. The other thing I've done is I've created a bit.ly link for the slides, so you can come back to the slides and we can share that in the chat as well. But that's just bit.ly/Alliance Live 2019. So you'll be able to get the slides there. There's a couple of links in the slides and other things that you might find useful. And my contact details are on the first and the last slide as well. So I thought it'd be good to kind of start off. We've got 15 minutes and then we've got time for kind of Q&A afterwards. You can use the chat box for any questions that come in. Ping questions into the chat box at any point. You don't need to wait till the end. So if I'm talking about something and you're unsure about it, put the question in the chat box and we'll address it at the end. So the first thing, I think just the kind of term digital can be quite unhelpful, and it means a lot of different things in different organisations. Sometimes when charities are talking about digital, or when it's kind of coming up at a senior management team meeting, or it's come up at the board, people in the mindset that we're talking about digital communications and social media. So I thought it'd be worthwhile, just when we're talking about digital, this definition is a good way of framing it. So applying the culture, processes, business models and technologies of the internet era to respond to people's raised expectations. So it's really thinking about how are your users and supporters and your staff and volunteers living their lives in 2019? Where does technology play a role in that? And how do you meet their needs as a third sector organisation? So that's really what we're talking about. It's not about replacing face-to-face services, but it's thinking about, do face-to-face services best meet the needs of the people that you support? Or is it a range of different approaches that are going to work with people? We'll talk about what I mean about that as we go through the webinar. So I thought this was quite an interesting one. This is an interesting stat that came out of some of the research that SCVO have done, and also some of Zoe Amar's work with the charity Digital Code. So 73% of voluntary sector organisations want their senior team to offer a clear vision of digital and what it could help them to achieve. So when we're thinking about digital evolution today, I want you to be thinking very much about the role that your senior team has to have within that and what leadership is going to look like. I'm going to talk a wee bit about that, but that importance of leadership and culture. And hopefully we can get some questions. We can kind of tease out some examples from the people that are on the webinar, and also chat to some of the other people in the room. I'm also today shamelessly plugging SCVO's Digital Senior Leaders Programme, which I've been running since 2016. So we've had almost 100 chief execs and other senior leaders come through the programme. I'm going to talk a wee bit later on about what that looks like. There's a link in this slide where you can click through and you can apply it and find out more information there as well. Okay, so this is really what it's all about. So we're talking about service transformation enabled by digital, not digital transformation for the sake of it. So this is not about going through a big giant procurement process to purchase a CRM because someone once told you a CRM is a good thing to have, or developing a giant digital strategy that takes a team of 8 people a year to put together, and it's 120 pages long, and probably most of it's out of date by the time you actually come to do it, and none of your staff are ever going to read it. So when we're talking about this today, we're talking about the simple building blocks of change that you can put in place. And I guess that notion that when we use the word evolution, we're talking about something that's never done. So when we're talking about digital, it's not that you're going to develop a strategy, it's all done, and then 5 years' time, you'll scrap it all and you'll do it all again. This is about a culture change that's thinking about the fact that digital is constantly shifting. And as an organisation, you need to be on top of that. You don't need to be experts, but you need to be thinking about the right questions that you're going to be asking. I thought it'd be worthwhile just quickly looking at a few examples. I've got 3 examples, really simple ones, what we're talking about when we think about digital change within third sector organisations, and just the ways that digital platforms can leverage in that ability to make efficiencies, but also to provide a much better service to the people that you're there to support. So the first one we're going to chat about is Ask Ailsa. So you can have a look at this after the webinar. So this is really simple use of AI chatbot technology, which sits on the Shelter Scotland website. So when the private residential tenancy rules came out maybe a year or maybe potentially 2 years ago now, the rules were a lot more complicated than people thought they were going to be. There was a lot of confusion about that. And what Shelter Scotland found was they were getting a huge volume of phone calls to their helpline, basically asking the same thing over and over again. So rather than people on a helpline dealing with really complex housing issues and maybe going to speak to a housing officer at South Lanarkshire Council, they were basically taking all their time up just repeating the same information. So they came up with this really simple idea of using a chatbot to basically trawl through the private residential tenancy rules to get the information to people really quickly. And you can ask Ailsa any question you like as a tenant or as a landlord, and she'll basically trawl the information that sits in those rules and spit out an answer for you. Interestingly, within about the first month, there have been some like 3,000 inquiries using Ask Ailsa chatbot. Now, at the end of the chat with Ailsa, Ailsa will ask you, do you want to speak to someone who's a live chat agent, or do you want me to put you through to our phone line if you need additional help? Out of those thousands of support inquiries online, only 9 people actually came back and required that additional help. Now, this is not about people not being able to now speak to an actual human. What it's about is those humans who are manning that phone line at Shelter Scotland are now freed up to work with much more complex cases. So just thinking about what that would look like within your organisation, particularly if you're an information-heavy organisation, how would you get the right information quickly to people rather than expecting people to download 40-page PDFs and kind of trawl their own way through it? Next one, this is really simple. So WhatsApp is now the most used app in the UK. So if we're taking Facebook, it's owned by Facebook as well, so there's been a huge amount of investment in it. Pretty much everyone has WhatsApp on their device. Now, the nice thing about WhatsApp is it pretty much cuts across demographics. Whether you're 14 or 64, there's a fairly high chance you're going to have WhatsApp on your phone. Now, WhatsApp now has the ability to have business profiles. It's got quite a powerful API built in as well, so you can deliver some really interesting stuff. I'm going to talk about this example. There's another nice one, actually. There's an organisation in the States, which is a parenting organisation, which now has an ability where you as a parent can sign up to get a bedtime story delivered to your phone every night, and you tell basically the API in WhatsApp, you tell it what ages your kids are, you tell them what time they go to bed, and every night before their bedtime, a new bedtime story drops into your WhatsApp with nice images for free. So really simple stuff about helping people become the best parents they can. This one's really simple. This is from Catalyst Housing Association, whose fuel poverty team offer a face-to-face service, same traditional model that most housing associations offer, where generally you will phone up and you will get an appointment in 2 weeks' time. You'll probably get a 2-hour window during the day, Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. You'll probably have to take a half day off your work. You'll probably have to bring your kids with you. Your kids will come along, probably pull the computer off the desk. You'll probably spend most of the time while that person sits on the phone to npower or Scottish Power asking about your bill and the tariff you're on. What you can now do is you can take a photograph of your gas bill or your electricity bill. That goes straight to the fuel poverty team at Catalyst. They'll ask you a few questions. They'll go and phone your energy provider on your behalf. That same service that would take place in a time that's completely inconvenient to most people now takes place in 2 to 3 minute increments over the space of a week. And you're dropping in as you see fit, using a tool that's based on your device, not on their website, but a tool that you're used to using. So just thinking about today, I want to think about where might WhatsApp fit in. So you probably, most people on this webinar who are listening right now, probably have some kind of strategy that covers major platforms like Facebook or your website or Twitter. But if we know that there's an app that everyone has on their phone, why is there no strategy for thinking about how we communicate and deliver services on that platform? Final one we're going to chat about. So this is the most unsexy example, but I think it's quite interesting. So Lifelink, who are a counselling charity based in Glasgow, do a lot of things like in-school counselling, postnatal depression groups. Jackie Taylor, who's their chief exec, came on one of the first cohorts of the Senior Leaders Programme. One of the big changes they made was a move away from very paper-heavy, kind of process-heavy systems where counsellors would go out and work with someone in a school, stuff would be captured in paper, they would have to then wait till they'd driven to an office, it would go on a computer, it would be emailed to an admin team, someone would pull it off that system, it would go into some clunky Excel spreadsheet. So there's a lot of processes in there, but there really wasn't an ability to understand how people were receiving services and what was the data and the story behind that. So Jackie went about transforming that. So now every counsellor has an iPad, so as notes are written up, as registration forms are completed, that ties directly into their Dynamics CRM system. They're also using Breathe HR with staff internally. That first year they brought that system in, that saved £15,000 on paper printing, photocopying and other costs associated with that. So when we're thinking about this stuff, it's not just about where do I find extra money for spend, is actually you might be able to free up your staff to get back to the job that they really love doing, so counselling in this case, but actually you might be able to save quite huge sums of money every year, and also thinking about the environmental footprint of that as well. Okay, I'm going to move on because we're getting close to our 15 minutes. Thought it'd be worthwhile just quickly talking about, I guess, the approach and the culture. So what I've seen from running the Senior Leaders Programme since 2016 is actually the organisations that succeed and do digital evolution well and provide better services to their internal and external users are not necessarily the ones with big budgets or the ones who have got a digital expert in-house. The ones that make the quick change and respond to what their users' needs are the ones who have got strong leadership and the ones who have the right culture in-house. So I thought it was worthwhile just talking about two quotes that I think kind of reinforce this from people that are far more clever than me. So Richard Craig at Technology Trust, who's our chief exec, this principle of, I guess, how we procure IT and digital and what it looks like for you. So taking class leading independent platforms that can talk to each other and plugging them together is infinitely better than trying to find one off-the-shelf solution that will involve compromises. And we've seen this a lot, particularly in care organisations within Scotland, big solutions like Carista, which haven't been supported over the last few years and actually very difficult getting out of these kind of tied in, all-encompassing, very expensive solutions. And actually an attitude and an approach where we should be looking at best-in-class tools that are going to fit the needs of different things that we need to do within our organisation. And that could be managing the rotas of frontline carers, it could be providing live chat services to vulnerable adults that you work with, but looking at the best tools that are going to work to deliver all of those things that are the kind of building blocks of change. Okay, next one. This is from Bob Barber, who used to be head of digital at Shelter. Shelter have made a lot of change in terms of digital, and actually where they succeeded is not about a digital team being completely separate from frontline staff, but actually when they work on digital projects, they bring in frontline staff. So when they've got a new idea for a live chat service or bot technology, they're bringing in people who work on that helpline, they're bringing in people who are experts in-house. So this approach, pick a problem, solve it in as cheap a way as possible, set some sensible metrics and see if it works. If it doesn't, don't worry, because you haven't spent much and you probably learned something quite valuable. Do it 10 times and you'll wake up to find that you built a whole new system for a fraction of the cost. So when we're talking about digital evolution, we're not talking about developing strategies and having 84 meetings to get to the point when you finally decide you're going to do something. It's thinking about what are those small incremental steps and how are you going to make that change based upon that. Okay, so I thought it'd be worthwhile just quickly giving you an overview of the Senior Leaders Programme. And if you're interested in that, there's that link back at the first slide. We can also share the link in the chat box as well if you're interested in this. The applications are open at the moment. And it covers basically kind of 5 key themes. And for me, these are the 5 key building blocks. And we're thinking about what does digital evolution look like in your organisation? These are the 5 areas you should be thinking about. So leading effectively, so effective senior leadership, and creating an ambitious and curious culture. So not let's create a giant digital team, but are people afraid to fail in your organisation? Are people only rewarded when they come to you with successes? So how do you share failures and how do people learn from that in your organisation? Are people allowed to be vulnerable in your organisation? What does that look like? How do you communicate internally? And all these things are about driving that digital evolution. Are you driven by data? So how are you making decisions? So not just is your data a nice database that becomes a digital filing cabinet, but are you using data to make decisions? This is quite a difficult one within the charity sector, where traditionally we're reporting on outcomes and we're looking at stuff that's happened in the past, but how do we constantly use data to evolve? How do we use data to change services on an incremental basis rather than these big shifts that happen after 3 years of reporting on outcomes, usually driven by a funder? Number 3, becoming cyber secure. So there's obviously the Cybersecurity Essentials accreditation, which is a really simple thing that charities can do. There's funding available for that via SCVO at the moment. So at the moment, there's not really an excuse in terms of cost. The support and the financial support is there. And really thinking about, as you're engaging with new funders and you're engaging with service users, this is something people are going to be thinking about. If you're keeping people's health records and you're trying to contract with local authorities, this might be part of the difference between whether you're successful or not, is how secure is the data that you're storing. Thinking about the importance of user experience and service design, for me, that's the other strand of how you should be driving your organisation and driving change, is thinking about being driven by data, but also being driven by service design and genuinely working with users. And then the final one, and deliberately being last, is using flexible technologies to organisational advantage. And really thinking about, going back to that quote previously, what are the building blocks of those technologies that are going to help you give that organisational advantage. Okay, I'm not going to go through this slide. There's a couple of quotes from people like Neil Richardson, who's Chief Exec of Turning Point, and Jane Griffin at LGBT Youth Scotland, talking about what they've got out of the Senior Leadership Programme. We've kind of pulled together some of the kind of big reasons as to why you might want to get involved. I'm going to finish up talking a wee bit about data and just reinforcing that fact that this needs to be buy-in from the most senior level of your organisation. So I always love this quote from Steve McCulloch at Blackboard. So without data, decisions are left to tribal knowledge, or worse, the whims of the highest paid person's opinion. Lots of you probably recognise this maybe from your current organisation or places you worked in previously. What we need to do is we need to remove big organisational decisions from things that are just on the whim that happen in meetings or tribal knowledge from frontline staff. Everything should be reinforced on data. How are we making decisions that are going to affect your service users? And really just, finishing up with this one, until we're further along this process, your CEO is your head of digital. So for some of you listening to the webinar today, I'm conscious you might not be the chief exec, you might not sit in the senior management team, but generally when change happens in charities, it happens because the chief exec and the board get it. They don't need to be experts, but they need to know the direction of travel. They need to ask the right questions. And this is something that we explore within the Senior Leadership Programme. Right, final thing, I'm just going to leave this up actually while we're kind of doing the questions. These are, it's known as the kind of 15 things card, and it's part of the Senior Leadership Programme, and it's basically the learning that's come out of the Senior Leadership Programme since 2016. And essentially these are the kind of 15 building blocks of change, or 15 really simple things that you can implement. So one of them might be about thinking, right, well, we want to do this and we want to get it at the most senior level, but nobody on our board has any clue about digital. And actually one of the things we need to do is try and recruit a tech expert to come onto our board. Or maybe our current job descriptions don't actually reflect the real skills that we need. And we need to update our job descriptions, but we need to be thinking much more about digital as we start to recruit new staff and volunteers. So I'll leave that one up. We're going to take questions from the webinar now, and we'll see if there's any that have come in. So you can use the chat box again if there's any questions that have come in. And we've got some here that have come in from Twitter as well, if you're a bit shy asking questions.
So thank you, Ross. That brings us to the end of the presentation session, and we're just going to move on to the Q&A, as Ross has said, and we've pulled together a selection of questions. So Ross, first in from Twitter, do you think digital is often the last thing to be looked at due to issues such as funding and other crucial services would come first?
Yeah, I mean, I think, and again, this goes back to the board and that senior management team. If they don't have that understanding of how digital is going to better meet the needs of those users, and often digital is seen in the context of things like social media and it's seen as being free, trying to free up that cash to do the right thing can be quite difficult, even when people can see those savings further down the line. So that example I gave with Jackie, that involved board buy-in to developing a new CRM system and investing in Breathe HR, but they could see the savings further down the line. So that initial investment is going to mean year-on-year savings that they've probably paid for that package within the first 2 years, and they'll continue to save as it goes forward. So I think there's often a bit of short-sightedness about digital, but I also think that fact that it sits in that silo of all digital is free in inverted commas has done it a bit of a disservice.
And do you think there's maybe a role for sort of around about the education of digital for funds that are available? You mentioned, the SCVO's fund that's out there. Is there maybe some people need to get more information out about the funds that's available for organisations?
I mean, it kind of goes two ways. So I guess one of the big issues that we've had is, so the SCVO's got a fund at the moment specifically for cybersecurity. I think it's up to £1,000 for Cyber Essentials grants, but obviously that doesn't cover kind of broader digital change in your organisation, quite a specific fund. The National Lottery Community Fund have had a fund which runs for last year. Unfortunately, there was only 2 charities in Scotland who were successful, so Aberlour and Children First got funding through that programme. And what we've seen is, and it's not the fault necessarily of funders, is the kind of digital specific funds either tend to be quite small, or it tends to be the bigger charities that are geared up to make the right applications and to get the money. And there's a bit of a gap where I've got a fear where smaller to medium charities are going to be left behind. I think there's also needs to be, so I've just joined the board of Impact Funding Partners, who used to be Voluntary Action Fund. And I guess one of the reasons that I've joined that is I'm quite interested in funders ensuring that digital sits within mainstream grants programs. So we're not just shoehorning people into these really small digital specific funds, but actually if you want to deliver the best service, maybe 40% of that service will be delivered online and 60% will be face-to-face. You shouldn't be shoehorned into a digital fund to deliver. It should be about outcomes.
Great, thank you. We've had a message come in from the chat from Stephen Gillespie, who's asking, cyber security essentials is mentioned. Where a charity is embracing Office 365 as its main platform with its own associated inherent security support, does his approach to being certified with cyber security essentials change?
No. So what I would say is cyber security essentials isn't just about, I guess, the technology that you've got in house. So it's not about necessarily have you chosen Office 365 or Google's G Suite as your kind of main platform. I think that's part of it, ensuring you're secure. So simple things like having 2-factor authentication in place. But actually, a lot of the stuff that's in cybersecurity essentials is culture. So it's about, is there ownership of cybersecurity across your organisation? How do you train frontline staff to ensure that they're secure? Do you know what passwords your staff are using, and do you have a protocol for passwords within your organisation? So a lot of it isn't necessarily about the platform you choose, but a lot of it is about the kind of people that are in the organisation. And when you kind of hear the horror stories that are happening week after week in charities across Scotland, across the UK, it's not necessarily about a traditional hacking where someone's broken into someone's system or their servers. It tends to be, the classic one where someone gets sent an email reportedly from the chief exec and someone spoofed an email address and they ask a finance person for money. The person panics and transfers the cash and it's ended up out the country. And a lot of the time what we're seeing is human error, not technology, not hacking. So I think that's something to keep in mind, and that's something that Cyber Security Essentials covers quite a lot in detail.
Great, thank you. We've got another question that came in from Twitter. You might have already answered a part of it through your presentation, but do you think we need a shift in organisational culture for digital to grow more? Is it up to the next generation, for example, third sector workers, to drive it forward?
Yeah, so I think the problem with culture, the same way there's a problem with the term digital, is culture is such a big, vague term that means so many different things to so many different people. And I guess what I'd like is if your organisational culture doesn't feel right for digital change and making mistakes and taking chances, is what are the deliberate steps you're going to make that change happen, rather than just saying we need to change our culture, coming up with 4 new values, sticking them up on a wall in your office, and then hopefully someone will read them and the culture will just miraculously change. We know that doesn't work. It's ludicrous, isn't it? So what I'd like people to think about is, what does a culture look like at the moment, and what are the changes that might help us implement that new culture that we want? And it might be something as simple as, our meetings last for 4 hours, and all that happens in the meetings is 14 people go around a table and they grandstand for 25 minutes each of what they've done for the last month, and then everyone goes away and nobody's decided anything, we've not made any change. Maybe you need to change the way that your meetings work. Maybe the way that you communicate internally is very top down. Maybe your chief exec sends an email once a week and the rest of it is very email heavy. Maybe something as simple as about having rules as to how you communicate internally and implement a tool like Slack or Microsoft Teams might be the thing that makes that initial change and levels out the playing field for ideas to rise to the surface. So what I'd like to think is people making deliberate changes to culture rather than just this kind of tokenistic thing of we've changed the culture because we came up with some new values and we kind of think that somehow it will just change itself.
Okay. Well, thanks, Ross, and thanks everybody for their questions. We're just going to close now with a statement from Matthew.
So again, thanks to Ross for delivering that fantastic presentation and answering those questions. We hope that has provided some insight and takeaways to bring to your own organisations. But before we go, if you'd like to get in touch to learn more about Alliance Life or to find out how you can deliver your own webinar highlighting your own project or organisation, the contact details are live at alliance-scotland.org.uk. Finally, a big thank you to everyone once again who registered for this webinar. We hope to have you join in our next session on the 7th of November with Jill Skiller and Julia Donaldson from Glasgow City HSCP. They'll be presenting on the improvement work they've been carrying out with frontline staff from the care at home teams, promoting the principles of what matters to you to improve outcomes for the individuals they care for. More information about this is available on Twitter. Just search for the hashtag Alliance Life. Thanks for listening.